Já faz algum tempo que falamos da velocidade das transformações do mundo. Mas, na verdade, esperávamos que essas mudanças seguissem um ritmo imposto por nós mesmos, segundo nossas
And we
próprias
expected that to
necessidades.
follow our
Como se
own
as
pace
mudanças
according to our
fossem
needs, as
previsíveis
if
ou
changes
fáceis
were
de assimilar.
predictable or
Até que o
easy to
mundo
be
parou
assimilated.
e tivemos que ouvir
Until
as
the world
notícias
stopped, we
e
had
ver de
to hear
frente
the
a nossa
news
própria
and see
vulnerabilidade.
face to
Nenhum de
face
nós
our
esperava
vulnerability.
experimentar uma
None of
situação
us
como
expected
esta, mas aqui
to face
estamos,
such a situation, but
imersos.
here we are,
Mas será que
deep
conseguimos
into
aprender
it.
alguma coisa com
But
tudo
were
isso?
we able to
Ser
learn
capaz de
anything from
aprender é
it?
a marca maior da
Being
nossa
able to
condição
learn
humana.
is
Mas tivemos que nos
a
superar para
characteristic of
lidar com
human
o que
condition.
chegou.
We had to
E agora
overcome our
ficou
own
patente o que é
problems, and
verdadeiramente
now
importante para
it's
nós.
clear
Entendemos que
what
fazemos
is
parte
really
de
important
grande
to
ecossistema
us.
e
We
que
are part of a
cada
large
depende dos
ecosystem,
demais.
and
O
we all
desafio é
depend on
aprender
everybody
juntos
else.
novos
The
caminhos da
challenge is to learn
transformação
together
digital.
the new
Fazer
ways of
diferença com
digital
inovação,
transformation, making the
empatia e
difference,
coragem.
creating
É com esse
innovation with
espírito que a
empathy and
equipe da
courage. It
LD
is in
Soft
that
está
spirit that
aqui
LD
pronta para
Soft
ajudar
team is
você
here
a fazer cada
ready
vez
to
mais
help
pelo seu
you
cliente,
make
oferecendo
and do
meios
much
para você
more
trabalhar
for
com
your
mais
customers,
produtividade e
offering the means so that
eficiência,
you can work
mesmo
with
nas
productivity and
condições
efficiency,
inesperadas do
even in
trabalho
harsh,
totalmente remoto.
unexpected
Nossas
conditions
ferramentas
of totally
oferecem
remote
aquilo que
work.
você
Our
precisa
tools
para dar
offer
atenção a
that
tudo que
which you
realmente importa
need
e que
to
só
provide
você pode
attention to
fazer.
that which really
Também
matters
tem
and which
tempo para
only you can
oferecer
do.
ao seu
So
cliente
you have time
resultados
to offer your
excelentes que
customer
sabe que vai receber
excellent
de você.
results,
Por
that
isso,
which
vamos
he knows he
continuar
can get from you.
firmes
So
para que
let's
em
go
breve
on
possamos destampar
and stay
nossos
safe
sorrisos
so
e
that together
comemorarmos
we
as
can open up
nossas
our
conquistas
smiles and
juntos nos desafios que
celebrate
estão por vir.
our
LD
new
Soft,
achievements, LD
potencializando o universo
Soft,
jurídico através da
potentializing
tecnologia.
the legal universe through technology.
No Brasil e em outros países,
In Brazil and in other countries, it is quite common for us to find severe criticism in the experts of in public health system. The episode of COVID, however, came once again to show the fundamental job and role of this modality of the investment of intellectual work. Patents are commonly accused of taking expenses of the health systems with vaccines and drugs, especially in situations of epidemics. It is a fact that without patents, the expense with medications would be lower. Undoubtedly, the competition between manufacturers of bioequivalent medication reduces crisis as long as they exist. And the episode with COVID has shown clearly that there is no high expense for the public health system, but that which you find when there is no vaccine or medication for a disease that affects the population, the whole population. Talking about expenses in the public health system is reductionism, something unforgivable when you talk about a potentially lethal pandemic. The cost of it is too high for everyone. Stopping schools, trade, commerce, and public services. A simple account shows that if the system could anticipate in a few days the appearance of a drug or vaccine, the expense will be low in face of the economic benefit coming from this forecast. The system of patents, as you know, makes it easier to collaborate in the search for new drugs and vaccines. Since it's an international legal system that is standardized, or quite so, it allows for different R&D institutions from all over the world to collaborate, like Fiocruz and Butantan in Brazil. For the same reason, licensing for the production in a decentralized fashion is simple. The result we can expect is of the anticipation of mass vaccination and the distribution of drugs because there is a relatively efficient system like that of patents. In this panel, we will have the opportunity of understanding this relationship and the facts under the moderation of Dr. Felipe Bering, and I will now give the floor to him. Thank you, Erika. Good morning, everyone. This is a preliminary observation. I believe the transmission did not begin. I just looked at it now, and it would be nice to have a look at the broadcast. I believe it has not started. I've been seeing from the comments, the transmission has not started yet. Erika or someone in the organization, could you check that? Maybe we should wait for a while until that is resolved. In English, it's working, but in Portuguese, it is not. So let's wait for a while. To see if the organizers can resolve the issue. I just sent a message here to the organizers. Yanni, Paulo, Flavio, and Ana Cristina. Let's wait for a while, because without transmission, it makes no sense for us to begin, so let's wait. Let's wait for a while until the technical issues are resolved. Only English is working from what I see here in the comments. So let's wait to see. I have just sent a message to see if they can resolve this technical issue. They asked us for a few minutes until they can resolve the transmission over the web issue. So I think the technical matter has been resolved. So thank you, Erica. Thank you, everyone. I think everybody can hear me now. Let us now begin. As announced, let's start panel 4, the protagonism of patents in times of COVID-19. The idea in this panel is to use the context created by COVID-19 to talk about the importance of innovation and patents. And based on that, the topic proposed will be analyzed and discussed from the point of view of three complementary perspectives. The university, first of all, R&D institutes, second, the productive sector, the industry, and third, the INPI, as the federal body responsible for granting patents. We have a very highly skilled panel. It will be started by Liane Lage, known by many of you who work in the field of intellectual property. She's a director of patents with the INPI. The second speaker is Dr. Paulo Lacativa. He's a doctor with a master's degree in endocrinology by the UFRJ and director of technology with BioZeus. The third and last speaker is Flávia Lima do Carmo, with a master's in biotechnology by UFRJ and director of the innovation agency of UFRJ, the university. And we'll have Ana Cristina Miller as the discussant. She's a partner of a law office. The total extensive CV of all speakers is on the web. About the structure of the panel, each speaker will have 20 to 25 minutes for presentations, and in the end, we'll have 15 to 30 minutes for questions and discussions. An important issue, the panel will last 90 minutes most, but now with the delay at the beginning, we might get a few additional minutes. If you have questions during the presentation, you can ask them on the chat as they come up. You don't need to ask for the end of the last presentation to ask them, because the chat will be monitored by Ana Cristina and myself during the presentations. Well, after those initial clarification issues, let's have Liane Lage start. Thank you, Felipe. Can you get my presentation? Okay, that's it. Okay, am I controlling the slides? Yes, I believe. So thank you all. I would like to greet ABPI and the panelists for the opportunity to participate once again in this Congress. And also I'd like to thank especially Luis Edgar and Edgar de Mello for the opportunity to provide participation to a large number of INPI experts. The protagonism of patents in COVID-19 led me to ideas that are similar to those of Erica, much more than the analysis of data, which is what I usually do as an engineer. So let's see. Can you see the next slide? Yes? Okay. So this is a domino or a cascade effect. The year of 2020 will be remembered for the effects of this epidemic, which started in China, but like a domino game, just touched all countries. Started in Carnival in Brazil, and it showed in one of its parts the technological and productive frailty of Brazil. Just as in many countries, respirators, masks, hospitals were missing, and scarce. and many other things were missing to fight this highly lethal virus. So in all society, everything came down. Different models of life and labor organization were changed and came down. The world changed. We needed to find a way out. All organisms and bodies in the government and private parties were trying to find the light at the end of the tunnel. That's where the INPI came to play a role. In the backstage, the INPI was working strongly in this war, and nobody knows about this. The INPI played a challenging role to help the government identify the Brazilian companies which were producing accessories and tools necessary to fight the epidemic. The information contained at the basis of patents helped identify technologies that were free for the exploration and possibility of licensing of new technologies and identification of national companies which were skilled to produce inputs and accessories at large scale so that we could provide in the first moments of the epidemic the necessary tools. Our technical experts were working all week long, non-stop. Those were quite stressful moments, but it stressed more and more the central role of intellectual property for the economy. Assessments by the Ministry of the Economics showed the necessary role of private and public institutions working together to produce respirators, masks, facial protectors, amongst other accessories. But in addition to the productive capability we also needed to identify companies with the necessary technology to provide alternative tools in the short term. We needed to innovate in behaviors, labor models, in solidarity, in all fields of human life. We implemented we saw a technological dependency in all areas. In health, although we have enough productive capability for the final product, we depend upon imported raw material. Brazil is importing more than 90% of IFAs, active pharmaceutical ingredients and inputs from China or India. Since large part of suppliers are in China, the first nation affected by the epidemic, the interruption and closure of their industries and concentration of efforts to meet internal demands, together with the action of large powers to purchase these tools, we saw that, we remember that, we became more and more vulnerable to meet the needs of our own population. So, with one more strategic action by INPI, we created a daily observatory of COVID using the largest input INPI has. It's highly skilled professionals competent in analyzing data from the patent bank and database to analyze all initiatives existing in Brazil and all over the world, in addition to publications of specific studies. The research of patents related to previous viruses of the same family helped research groups providing useful information for the development of therapeutic agents and preventive agents for COVID-19, with the certainty that industrial property is an encouragement to innovation. We created a necessary step. In 1 month, we put forward the resolution of priority action for any request related to the epidemic. Data related to the requests considered a priority are published on the website of INPI and updated through a dashboard every week. It is possible then to interact with the data and check where the requests are being filed, what the situation is of that application. You can follow all the requests. We have 109 applications which are considered a priority for treating COVID. Amongst those, 74 have already been accepted and entered the program. and the 56 are being analyzed. 7 have been granted, and 2 were dismissed. We're talking about a very short term. The vast majority of applications with filed in 2020, it is 36, and 42 of the total number of applications considered a priority are from Brazilian applicants. This can be seen on the chart. We can identify the origin, the situation of all of them. I'd like to invite you to visit our website and follow the situation. The ABPI has also acted in the priority examination of potential medications for treating the disease and helped the Ministry of Health in identifying all applications for patents related to the main active principles being studied. Our researchers have made efforts, additional efforts, for these 63 priority exams. All these movements were coordinated and enforced already as home office. The ABPI started home office work immediately. In parallel, trying to maintain the ABPI working with high productivity. That is something acknowledged by all. The ABPI has not stopped.
The fact is that amongst this strategy, the intellectual or industrial property has highlighted itself to serve as well this technological need. The pandemic did not decelerate the action, and we had a new effort by companies, governments, universities, and individuals, and the changes in the individual values and corporate values. They made it possible to open innovations and to have this main goal of expanding this capacity to innovate. It has shown that Brazil, in a joint effort, was able to innovate and can innovate. So it is opening a new concept for the country. However, once the first steps were overcome, facing this urgency for the vaccine and to find a safe and effective drug, the humanity was in fear, and fear expresses itself. We have this scenario caused by the virus, more than 180 countries with millions of deaths. The question is presented to us: can industrial property limit this fight against the pandemic? And this question was in the initial presentation of the Congress, and it's been moving around the society. How are we going to work with the vaccine? COVID-19 has been showing us that it's not that simple to develop a new drug. We dream of a new vaccine every day, day by day. We follow on TV, and we know that those that are most advanced, they are in clinical phase 3. Everybody knows what is clinical phase now. And this global emergency at that step, we have been developing some phases that are overlapped, they are compressed, or they're being developed in parallel. So the clinical trials for some of them will be concluded in months with extremely high investments. These values will be conveyed or transferred to the consumer. Are we going to have enough to serve all the population? The company that will have the right, the copyright for the vaccine, will it be able to serve the world population? So we have several questions, and fear is here, present. So the access to vaccines, drugs, diagnosis, and other technologies in healthcare is a universal human right. So shouldn't we stop some of the intellectual properties on products that have to fight the pandemic? So like in South Africa, according to the WHO. So all of that led us, our legislation and in legislations in other countries, to propose some bills, to present some bills to even stop some of the patents right here, and some vaccines or tests for COVID. So some of these bills, they are innocuous due to what we have in our legislation already established for the compulsory licensing. However, although it is allowed by the legislation, the when a patent is suspended, it raises another type of question. Do we have in Brazil the technological domain and resources to produce this drug in this time frame that is necessary? We need it to be used tomorrow, right away. Could we produce that if we had the compulsory license? So this is a question that we have to think about. The fastest way seems to be the negotiation with the owner of the technology. And it seems to be the pathway that Brazil has been choosing. So we've been talking to new labs and research centers acting in the studies for new vaccines. According to an ABC publication, the vaccine that is being studied in Oxford will be produced by Oswaldo Cruz Foundation, and it will be manufactured according to our lab's requirements. So by the agreement, Fiocruz will receive the pharmaceutical ingredient and will finish the first delivery of 30 million doses until January 2021. As has been already said by the president of Fiocruz, the production of a higher dose, this vaccine will take 2 doses to serve the whole population. It will not happen this fast and will depend on the complexity of the whole process to incorporate technology. So, look here, we're talking about a highly qualified lab to produce vaccine as Fiocruz, and we are saying that it's not that easy to incorporate this technology. So when we'll talk about compulsory license, we have to think about what would be the factors for us so that we could produce that fast. All these questions and different data as well, we are presenting here so that we can all think about them. And I do believe in the sense of responsibility of the industry so that we, together with the government and the healthcare system all over the world, we can work together. Some companies, due to humanitarian issues, that are already working in this sense. We have seen the Caletra being released. The rights to use was one of the possible drugs to treat COVID. And as this company, other cases are occurring and other negotiations will occur as well, I don't believe that companies will have interest of such a higher profit or of such financial nature that will hamper this joint effort. So we'll have good sense, common sense working here. Of course, all the vaccines are being protected by patents because they have to serve their strategical interest as well. And there's a lot of knowledge involved in the production of these vaccines that can be used in the future to develop new products. However, the fact of having them protected by patents, it doesn't mean that this will prevent humanity to have access to them. We are facing a different reality, and certainly we will have a different solution for this reality. Many people have been asking me if all of them were filed, all the applicants. You need 18 months of confidentiality, but we can state that we had applications being filed all over the world, but we don't have access to them. We have made some surveys in our database using some keywords and different classifications, and the figures that we have found indicate that really there is a movement in the sense of innovating, but there are figures that are underestimated. For instance, when you look for the keywords, if you make the search by keywords, we have found 122 applications, as it is shown here in this chart. The larger figure is we have here in May and then April. But with the secrecy and the confidentiality, we cannot find it. And the keyword is used to make this search by the title and the abstract. So we can only identify that the positive movement is happening. Another example that has been used in our databases, we have used this type of codes for the same reason in this confidentiality period. In the searches that we perform, the values or the figures are not significant. They are underestimated. So what do we have for diagnostic tests? We have identified 11 applications in 2019 for lung respirators. We have seen 13 applications, and in 2020 for max 27 applications. And just to confirm that this confidentiality period prevents information from being disclosed, I will show you now this chart that is in our site. On our website, we see that the access will be possible as of 2018, when we had some of the applications already out of confidentiality period. So we cannot state clearly how much innovation or applications in this sense because of this confidentiality period. Okay, to summarize this presentation, I can state that intellectual property, it's being understood at a strategic area in our country through innovation. Brazil is facing this turning point. We went all the way down and now we are going up. And this is the time for change. This is the time that the country has to think thoroughly about it in our productive sector, that it can act, that we have more intersection between production and university, generating a lot of knowledge so that we can move faster, and we cannot miss this train. We have to change. After COVID, industrial property in Brazil will never be the same. I am totally convinced that we have started our step towards the change. And we will celebrate the 50th anniversary of ABPI, and it is remodeled, and it is confident of its participation in this innovation process once the industrial property is this critical pillar for the innovation system in the country. So these were the issues and my considerations that I like to bring to you. It was very similar to the introduction that Erica made. It seemed to me that was Erica's voice. So I do believe that this is where we have to work on and how we can discuss this subject in the future. Thank you once again. Thanks, ABPI, for this opportunity. Thank you, Liane. Yeah, I was able to stay right on time. Thank you, Liane. Excellent presentation, a lot of information, and an excellent opportunity to think about such a relevant topic, which is this gap in technology between Brazil and developed countries. I'm sure that we'll have many questions in the future. So, moving forward, we have Paulo Lacativa now to start the second presentation. Okay, I'm waiting for my slides. And I would like to thank Felipe for the invitation, ABPI for organizing this event. Let's wait a bit because it seems that the presentation has not started yet. I see myself on screen. Okay, go on. So I am Paulo Lacativa. I will talk about the vision of BioZeus, my company, our company, and I'll split in three parts. First, I'll talk about the company and the data related to the company, and so that we have our perspective on the subject. Secondly, I will present the analysis that we had on the patents, not only COVID, but in patents as a whole in the Brazilian university. And then I will cover some case studies to illustrate the impact of a patent in our area, developing new drugs and biotechnology. So first, about the company, BioZeus is a company that was created by a fund, the only one that is investing in this area is Ciências da Vida, Sciences of Life. In this segment, we have to think about the investor that is investing in our company. This fund and try to find biotechnology projects, and we understood that we had this gap, that the professors in the university, what they discovered there, and the how they would bring it back to the society, making the drugs available in the drugstores. And so we were able to allow that what is being discovered in the university can be made into a drug that is going to be available. So a drug that is being developed by Brazilians and can travel all over the world. And our idea is not to commercialize the drug. So once we test and we see that the drug works after all clinical trials, and then we can deliver that to the pharmaceutical industry, and then we see ourselves as developers of new drugs. Regarding our actions, we have the partnerships that we have with the universities. I have gone all over the country in several universities where the ones that were in this scope of our project, and we had partnerships with the UFRJ, the Federal University of Rio de Janeiro. So at a second step, we analyzed the project in what I call a 360-degree analysis, and all the principles that are necessary to develop the project, among them the patentability analysis. So we have more than 700 projects being analyzed, and we intend to reach 3,000. So we follow with the project and we develop ourselves. So we try to decrease the risk and increase the value of the asset. At the end, we need a partnership with the pharmaceutical company to commercialize the product. So understand what we are. We have some data of the analysis that we made here in Brazil, and we have analyzed the projects that we received. So the ratio here for us to the reason to refuse these projects was patentability for more than half of it. And what do we analyze in the patentability issue? 40% of them, we have the absence of the internationalization. As was said here, we have to check that before we accept them. And 21% they were already old, and 1/4 we understood that was not bringing any novelty. and 18% a limited scope, 10% had a previous publication, and 4% we had a unfavorable written opinion for the patent. So you can see how important is a patent. How can we take this project from the university and develop the project? We have some cases where the project were extremely interesting. We had a compound that we were able to prevent autoimmune diseases, but they had an issue with the patent with a limited wording, and we tried to create new data on that.
And when this discussion begins, whether or not the patent is necessary, I believe I will try and answer with the next slides based on our experience. This is the rheumatoid arthritis project. It comes from the Brazilian biodiversity. It is a compound that inhibits inflammation without causing immunosuppression, decreasing the defense system of our patients. It has a unique mechanism of action. It is the only single medication that can act in that way. When we looked at this project, we understood that we could position that so as to avoid that rheumatoid arthritis, a disease that causes a large degeneration in joints, might advance. And Brazil spends a lot of money with biologicals, and this would avoid people from using biologicals or postpone its use, because in comparison with biologicals, it's much more powerful and does not cause immunosuppression. We have licensed the project when it was in the international phase. It had only been filed in the US and Europe, and the patent only covered the treatment method and not the compound itself due to biodiversity issues. We tried to do a medicinal chemistry work so as to improve the compound, but all the compounds produced were not better than the natural compound. And we presented then, all companies were highly interested, but they refused because of the patent issue. In addition to Brazil, Europe, and the US were involved. So it is a patent that is considered weak because it didn't cover the context. So we presented that to several companies, and they were all interested, but when we reached the step dealing with patents, then they stopped and did not continue with the licensing process. The next project is experience number 2 with diabetes. Here, the expert found in diabetes type 1 especially, the lack of a hormone which is not replaced. And then the patient who's diabetic taking insulin will not be normal. He will still be a nail person. A person who has a thyroid problem, by taking the drug, he will be normal, not with diabetes. The researcher turned this hormone into a drug compound, so it can be taken as a drug. We entered the project, and we could place this in several countries. And by understanding the medical issue, we found that by putting it together with insulin and giving both hormones in a single injection, it might increase the value of the project. And that worked by generating a second patent. And an international insulin producer became interested, and we signed a cooperation agreement developing the hormone and presenting it together. But the patent was granted in some countries, Europe, Japan, Australia, and in spite of our efforts, it was dismissed in the USA. The USA has a problem when the examiner follows up to the last step and finds a personal issue, then this person dismissed. So the international producer chose not to continue with co-development in spite of the technology and the need for diabetic patients to have this new hormone. The shareholders understood that the fight in the USA would be too expensive going into court, and they chose not to apply in the US because it would then not work. So they decided not to do co-development. So it's two excellent technologies that didn't continue because of patent issues. Now, this is the project we have, the lung project. It is a substance that is able to produce bronchodilation and vasodilation in COVID patients who develop lung disease, having shortness of breath, and need to be intubated. By taking this drug, they would not need to be intubated or would have less time in respirators and would be removed from the intubation earlier. The first patent application was filed in Brazil and then in PCT, and all countries who had filed granted the patent. And the first thing that was granted would be a drug that didn't act on the lung. So we did some medicinal chemistry work, tested more than 160 compounds, and got a lung model. And 7 of the projects had this extraordinary anti-inflammatory action, causing vasodilation, which would be good, very good for COVID patients. It is also useful for other lung disease, as you can see. Regarding the patent issue, we filed the first application with the USPTO and then PCT. The first item was unfavorable in PCT. We spoke to the examiners of PCT, and the ANPI examiners were excellent in helping us and guiding us how we should write the patent documentation. So we filed the answer, making all necessary changes required by the ANPI, or guided by the ANPI rather. And the guidance provided by the ANPI examiners were taken up to the USPTO. And now the patent has received the notice of allowance, which shows a victory for us as a result of our interaction with the ANPI. These are the data. Thank you all. Thank you, Dr. Paulo, for the excellent presentation. It is always interesting to find out about the relationship between private companies and research institutes plus university, with a focus on the pharmaceutical industry. It's quite interesting for us to try and understand how projects are selected and why some are dismissed and denied. Very interesting. Thank you. Dr. Flavia, you are free to begin the last presentation in our panel. Good morning, everyone. I would like to thank Felipe's invitation and the ANPI's invitation and the organizing committee for organizing the panel. I'd like to show you the point of view of the university in face of the pandemic we are living now. Let's talk about the point of view of the university. I will present the Innovation UFRJ Agency. It is the Technological Innovation Center of the Federal University of Rio de Janeiro, and then I will go into innovation and projects being developed during the pandemic in the Federal University. This agency was created in 2007 under the dean or the presidency of the UFRJ, trying to disseminate multiple aspects of innovation in the UFRJ. related to intellectual property and technological transfer issues. Amongst its attributions, we have dissemination of this culture all over the university. We know that Brazilian universities don't have this culture of innovation yet, so it is our function to disseminate it. Secondly, the management of processes related to the protection of knowledge coming out as a result of academic research, organizing technological licensing processes so that the knowledge generated by universities can reach the population at large, and then organize partnerships between companies and the UFRJ, especially with the new legal framework on science, technology, and innovation. Competence for developing competencies for a new center. And since its beginning, it's been working with innovative projects in the areas of social innovation and entrepreneurship. Our areas of action are related to intellectual property, the protection of knowledge generated by the institution, technological transfer, that is, make it so allow this knowledge to reach the university through finding a production partner, disseminating the culture of innovation through social innovation inside the university and entrepreneurship, and social innovation. We shouldn't think only about technological innovation. Social innovation generated, especially in the university, with diverse areas, and entrepreneurship. It's been more and more requested for the creation of spin-offs and startups, especially by the students. Our agency is structured in 3 areas: intellectual property, that's responsible for protection of knowledge through patent filings, design, software, and then technology transfer, which aims at finding productive partners to license or produce the process or product created, and the development of a culture of innovation, which has the purpose of organizing and integrating all the initiatives that come up all over the university through the entrepreneurship and social innovation initiatives all over the university. To provide support to these 3 areas, we have legal, communication, and in the intellectual property area, we act trying to meet the needs of the inventor or researcher. We have the in-house researchers and independent researchers also. That support is provided through a contact form filled on our website. Once the form is filled, we set up meetings, we analyze the invention. If the invention can be protected, then we have the application being filed or the registration of the trademark. And then we follow up, managing the portfolio. The portfolio of the UFRJ is focused mainly on chemical processes and compounds, followed by drugs and therapies, materials and engineering, and biotechnology. In the area of technological transfer, we try to have the production of technological and scientific knowledge, basic or applied, to find a production partner so that the knowledge can reach society at large. So we assess the technology first, we do prospection of partners and companies, and finally we license the technology or establish a partnership for research, innovation, and production of the project. We have a technological window, so to speak. We have the portfolio of all our technologies developed. It includes different areas and sectors such as materials engineering, compounds and chemical processes, agriculture, and drugs and pharmaceutical industry. In terms of developing the innovation culture, entrepreneurship, and social innovation, this sector deals with these 2 topics in the university. So it acts both with new projects. The agency works since the very beginning of the project, developing actions with different stakeholders since its conception up till the monitoring. And it also acts as a partner for the strengthening of ongoing existing projects. In this sector, we have activities aimed at dissemination of the culture of entrepreneurship and intellectual property through courses, workshops, lectures, as well as offering different disciplines in the undergraduate and graduate courses. In this scenario of the pandemic, our agency, as the Technological Innovation Center, mapped all initiatives in the UFRJ together with the Presidency of Research, mapping all projects being developed to face COVID-19. I brought only a few such examples. We had 130 projects subdivided into sub-projects, but basically 130 labs were working specifically with projects focusing on COVID-19. We have a large range of projects focusing on the initial search of treatment to treat, such as the study of a chemo library, and the last bio, a lab inside the CCS ICB. The screening of naturally originated extracts and pharmaceutical compounds. And also we have studies monitoring the virus and its dissemination, trying to find biosensors and the use of biocomputers to find the behavior of the virus. And also projects trying to focus on the front line, such as the production of alcohol, sanitizers, APIs. In addition to that, we have several ones focusing on the project developed by the Center of Public Studies and Human Rights, which is a strategy for prevention in the slums, in the favelas. Amongst those, these are the ones that won the highlights. We had the anti-SARS-CoV-2 serum, which was protected. A patent application was filed. It was the result of a research between UFRJ and IVB researchers. They produced this serum based on protein S, a recombinant protein of coronavirus, which was produced in the lab at COPE as a result of COPE's work. And this protein presented neutralizing antibodies which were 50 times more powerful than the new coronavirus in the plasma of people who had been infected by COVID-19. This has been publicized since September on the media, when then it became the result of a protection. And another interesting technology, and this is quite peculiar because it was developed before the pandemic by a student in the arts university. He developed this solution here, how to close passage doors with your feet. This helps in hygiene and accessibility in times of pandemic. It also became it came out on the news because it was so interesting. Also, we had our pulmonary ventilator, which became known as VexCo. The project aimed at finding a micro-controlled pulmonary ventilator for support ventilation in patients with severe symptoms, pulmonary symptoms of COVID-19. This ventilator used a different strategy. UFRJ decided not to ask for its protection because it was supposed to be massively produced in a simple, rapid, and cheap way, so it was not to be commercialized by using resources available in the national market. A prototype was developed. It received the financial support of FAPERJ, and it had a large team of collaborators, and it's been put in force with a partnership with different companies. And finally, I'd like to present to you another project in the area of social innovation, which was the Mano a Mano Fund, hand-to-hand fund, which was created so as to assist vulnerable families affected by the pandemic, so as not only to provide financial support, but also to move this network of assistance led by the UFRJ and different organizations. It was implemented in a partnership with a SHOC, an NGO with a focus on social work. These are just a few examples of what UFRJ has been doing in terms of new technologies to face the pandemic. There's still a lot to be developed, a lot to be implemented and protected through intellectual property efforts. And I'd like to show only a few examples of how important the university is in developing research, in doing development and innovation in the crisis that we are facing now.
I think that was it. I'm available for questions. Thank you, Dr. Flavia. Very interesting, your presentation and the opportunity to get to know a little bit more about this innovation agency in a public, such a renowned federal university. This was really interesting. So thank you. We have finished the presentation. Thank you again, Liane, Paulo, and Flavia. We will now start the Q&A session. And before we start with questions from the audience and myself, Ana Cristina would like to open the session for Q&A. Can you hear us? I think you are muted. I believe that you are muted. No? Can anyone else hear her? Now we can hear you. Please be our guest to open the Q&A. So thank you all. Good morning to everybody. And thank you, ABPI. I thank the president for the invitation, Erica, and all the organizing committee, and our panelist, Felipe. Also, thank you for inviting me for the panel. And listening to Liane and all the three speakers today, I think that we're going to raise good issues for the debate, because Liane already pinpointed a very core issue regarding the importance of industrial property, and she raised the question about that. If the industrial property would face this new vaccine, a new technology production, not only to fight COVID, but any other diseases that might occur in the world. And one of the main points is to realize how the intellectual property at this point in Brazil has become more and more a relevant tool for innovation to generate jobs and income. And I think that it's not by chance to have this link with the Ministry of Economy, bringing back the DIP and placing the intellectual property and patents as a whole at the core of the discussions. I think the issues are really relevant when she presented them, and we do live in an exceptional situation. I do believe that it is transitory, but we see some questions and doubts that are being raised regarding the access to drugs and vaccines. And I think Liane talked clearly about this strong intellectual property system that it's necessary. And if we look at the vaccines, where we are in this great expectation about this issue of the vaccines, and if we look at it, we realize that most of the technologies that are being developed and tested, and many of them that are in the phase 3 of the trials, they are related, they have patents related to them, but most of the patents, they have been filed longer ago. Because within the process of producing a vaccine, we have several technologies that have to be implemented so that the product can finally reach the market. So one example would be related to the logistics, right? For the vaccines, those that are ready to be released in the market, besides being immune and guaranteeing the safety and the immunity, they also need to be safe and to reach the final user in a proper way. And the logistics is relevant and important because when we look at the diversity of countries regarding temperature and weather in general, the logistic will need actions to preserve the vaccines. There are several technologies that require that the vaccines are stored in minus 80 degrees. How can we create opportunities from the logistics point of view, from the storage point of view, being stored in appropriate ways? And it all demands an effort, investment efforts, scientists and professionals that are studying and producing the technology, and at the end of the day, the companies that choose to run this risk, they expect a payback, some return. So we are facing this exceptional scenario right now, but many companies, they have already made available some of the technologies, providing public access to them. And we have this industrial property as this main pillar, so that the companies can even decide in the future if they want to donate the object of the patent for the society to allow its development. So I think we have this first pillar of intellectual property as a key element, really relevant. And in the following presentations by Paulo and Flavia, we make the link that we desire so much, especially here in Brazil. We hope that it happens. Looking at bioseals, it's really interesting. And my question, Paulo, to you, you talked about the fact that you are controlled by an investment fund. And I think this is amazing. I congratulate you because I think we need companies of venture capital bringing investment to these technologies. And sometimes we know they are in the very beginning of the research. This is the role of the university. And we do need the support from these funds to inject capital to develop the technologies. And you have shown an interesting slide where you talked about why you refused the project. 46% of them, they were denied or rejected by the fund because they didn't have the PCT. 18%, they had a limited scope. I'd like to ask you a question to you, to Flavia and to Liane, unfolding this issue. Throughout the years, from what I've seen, the company was created in 2014. If you realize while you were visiting the university, if you have seen a change in how the technological centers of the university have been working, if you have seen changes. And when we talk about 18% being rejected due to a limited scope, I think here we have a very particular issue. Probably Philippe has seen that in his daily routine. Once the application is filed, when we're talking about a company, a startup, or a university, we are still very far from the product or the process to be ready to be in the market. And many times we see that the applications, they're not appropriate, and we need to verify everything. We are counting on the support of the inventors. They have to think about the future, and sometimes they are working on the bench yet, and it have to think which one will be ready to go to the market, but it will take a few years. So regarding the applications, we have to include most of the functional equivalents so that the application is written properly. We know that in our daily routine, this is not an easy task. I would like to hear Paulo talking about this limited scope, what situations that he faced and the project was rejected because had this limited scope. To Liane, I will ask about Article 32. I wanted you to talk a little bit further about some future measures that you might consider to reassess Resolution 93, or if you want to talk in general, what you have heard in some lectures and congresses, the situation that the companies had to face because of due to the inappropriate wording of the application. They face difficulties, and how can they change that to change this scope, and some situations that university and companies that missed that opportunity to have a patent related to a national product that would be relevant, they were out of this opportunity of licensee because of the limited scope in general terms. And Flavia, I would like to ask her if she could, inside the university, from the university perspective, how have you been discussing the text and the drafting of the patent applications, what issues you have been facing when you draft the applications regarding all the requirements, and sometimes you are not allowed to change the standard. So I'm sorry if I talk too much right now, but if it's necessary, I can repeat, and then we can open for the audience. Well, I will start answering the question to me that was asked to me about the university and the limited scope. Well, the answer would be yes and no. We see a change, but Brazil is really large, and here we have to split South, Southeast, Brasilia, and the rest of the country, because these South, Southeast, and Brasilia centers since 2012 we have been analyzing the project, and we see that they are more mature, South, Southeast, and Brasilia, regarding the patent drafting. And then before that, they would draft a patent just to file it. So we have seen those that were not written well, that they had limited scope, no previous analysis of prior patents. So they just had that, they made the professor to file something and not develop the patent properly. But that would go against the inventor, and the clock would start ticking. After 1 year, you had an issue because it would become more expensive, and the university, they have limited resources. They had start analyzing and selecting the patents that they would file and looking for a partner. And sometimes this licensing in Brazil would take 2 years, 2 years and a half, and that's it. The patent is running, and they pay for the internationalization of the patent, and they didn't have the process ready to go. What we saw is that the Southeast Brazilian centers, they started, once they had the technology, they would look for a partner before filing the application, so they would not have the time working against them. And then finally, when they found the partner, they would file. Okay, from the economical point of view, it makes sense if you want really to develop the patent. And another issue, that a patent that is written with under several hands, it's much stronger. So you have different roles in the text, in the biozeals. We have the experience. You see the patent agency that we hire, they start writing under four hands, and it becomes a more stronger patent. So we have seen that working, and the patents and the projects that we have seen that are more successful, we start in the very early stage making the proper drafting. Excellent. Thank you, Paulo. We're going to open to the audience, but then Felipe, I have other questions, and Felipe, if we have time, we can go forward. Flavia or myself? Well, I'll go. Paulo talked a little bit about that, especially with this, how time works against us. The researchers, they are asked to act and score in terms of patents. So we have to fight against time. The researchers, they have to publish so that they can get the projects, and they have to advise as well. The students have their master's degree and PhD projects. So the amount of production, scientific production, we have to balance that with the amount of patents that are created in a university. But we indeed had cases where the patent was not drafted properly, and we had difficulties. It was not strong enough. So now we are investing in the know-how of the researcher regarding the drafting itself. Our agency started taking a pathway to hire third parties for the patents, because the NITs, they have this gap. They don't have civil servants or people skilled for that. They don't have a career on that. So they will come, they were well skilled, but they were then hired by the market. So we had this issue on the patent filing. So in the last years, we have been hiring third parties, and this has been helping a lot so that we have a strong patent to negotiate with the productive sector. Fortunately, Brazil, as Paulo said, if you get a newer application and an older application, there is a major difference. But constantly, I still receive national inventors. We have large-scale projects that are already being negotiated, and the patent is not granted because of Article 23. And I'm not talking about the older applications. It can improve with time. We've seen that. But it is undeniable that we have to pay attention to the assessment of these articles specifically. INPI, as I said, one of our main steps is to end with our backlog. But in parallel, we have to look at our norms and we have to look for some interpretations of the norms. We are looking already to our legal department, and Article 32 had a difficult issue in the past. In 2000 something, we have this change in terms of interpretation as of 2008, and this questioning have gone to our prosecution office, and then had a new interpretation of INPI, and we have been following and moving forward with the interpretation that we have today.
And this makes it difficult for us to work and analyze. And the worst thing is that it affects the inventor too much. Recently, I was in Japan, and in a company I visited, they told me that because of Article 32, some of their applications and requests were so dilapidated that they were no longer protecting the invention, so they were no longer interested in filing that in Brazil. And they were very much concerned with the continuity of other companies filing their applications in Brazil. The country has evolved, we have evolved, we're entering the 50 years of existence of the INPI. We must advance and evolve in our interpretation as well. We're entering the era of innovation, and we do want intellectual property to play its role in this new era. Amongst other aspects we would need to discuss, we are now starting this discussion and review of Article 32. We have a working group analyzing this. In ABPI, there will be a panel specifically discussing Article 32. So really, we have entered this era. It is the hot topic now. This is something that intellectual and industrial property in Brazil needs to address, was an area which we need to advance on. We need to discuss this in terms of legal interpretation and understanding, and if it's the case, propose a change in our legislation. So it's on the table to be discussed, but we still lack more efforts and willpower to be able to change, to provide this change to society. This is our proposal in the INPI. We wish all our discussions to be taken to society at large so everyone can discuss everything that's involved. Adriana can tell us about everything we've been discussing about this. Thank you, Dr. Liane, for the comments, Drs. Paulo, Flavia, and Anna. We still have 20 minutes for questions and discussions. Before we go on addressing these Q&As from the audience, I'd like to ask Flavia. The topic is complex, but you can answer as much as you can. Brazil is the 9th economy in the world, as everyone knows. On the other hand, Brazil is the 62nd country in the rating of innovation. From the point of view of an R&D public government company, what do you attribute that to? On one hand, it is the 9th economy. On the other hand, it's the 62nd country in the rating of innovation. So what do you attribute that to? Well, I believe we still need to create this culture of innovation in Brazil. It's essential. In other countries, we have seen that from the beginning. It's essential. Now we have different examples of that. The person is in the university and they don't know what that is, what innovation is. So I believe One of the causes of that is the dissemination of this culture of innovation. On the other hand, we have this thing of the system being more articulated, more, and the new legal framework comes to change that, I believe. Different things have been said about the ecosystem of innovation in Brazil, and they are focusing this so that this rating can change. This is basically it. We should leverage this ecosystem. We are now developing a national strategy, which we did not have before, and this is going to change so that we can leverage and advance in this classification of innovation and improve there. Well, thank you, Flavia. Ana Cristina can select a few other questions from the chat. I selected two to Dr. Paulo, and I'm going to squeeze in one of mine. Two questions from the audience. Antonella Carminati is asking Paulo, how do you do the FDA applications analyzed by your company? Question number two, Antonio Carlos Abrantes. The Vexio by UFRJ project, which won the headlines, would it have attracted more private investors had it overcome the patent issue? And finally, mine. Brazil is not patenting enough, according to data disseminated by the ABPI. 29% of national applications are filed by companies. 40% or so is by individuals, are filed by individuals. Why is that so? Why are national companies filing so little? They're not investing enough in R&D? Or because R&D expenses are not efficient? How do you see that? So it is a package of questions, 3 questions actually, if you can answer. Well, the first question, I don't know if I understood it well. I think he wanted to know about not the FDA, but the USPTO. I don't know if I understood the question correctly. Did they mention FDA or USPTO? Maybe they want to know how we analyze the USPTO. Well, we have a national agency, Bering, supporting us. And we have 2 large collaborators, American partners. And they support our requests with the USPTO. It is very important for us to discuss the strategy and how to file the applications and how to cover our projects. We have a good support there. I don't know if that was the question. Regarding the second question, when we talk about to the investor needs clear rules to abide by. He needs to understand the costs, the timeline, and the return on investment. If you bring forward lack of certainty, the investor is not going to put his money there. In my area, we're talking about things that cost $10 to $30 million to be put in the market for 10 years. So in the area of pharmaceuticals, if you are searching an investor to put that money, you won't find it unless you provide certainty. They will ask, when you put it in the market, after 10 years developing it, and suddenly someone comes and imitates you, what is the certainty you have? What is the safety? If you have no safety, they will not spend that money. The question was not about a device, but in order to have an investor, you need clear rules and well-established data. If you have any type of uncertainty, investors are not going to put their money there. Now, about the low patentability rates here in Brazil. Once again, I will talk only about my area of interest. In terms of culture, we have 2 types of professors filing patents. those that are beginning, starting to work, and those who are retiring and want to make a difference. So it would be nice if someone wouldn't wait until they retire to wish to make a difference. So there is this issue of local ideology, but I believe this is the case in other countries as well. Here in Brazil, the difference might be the lack of a success story in our area. After we have a success story, is a Brazilian case of a patent being granted. It was developed here, and it reached all over the world. Then I believe others will be interested. So being a pioneer pays a price. But if we do it well, I believe we'll open new frontiers and improve the environment. This issue of low patentability requires a better investment environment. We have mainly investment from the government and not much private sector investment. So over the years, just to give you an idea, we had the BNDES and different types of bioinvestments, SINEP, FAPESH, but actually, because of the crisis, that dropped. So the lack of money, mainly, is not encouraging patent application requests. Thank you, Dr. Paulo, for your comments. Felipe, can I interrupt you for a minute? Because a question was sent to me, and I'd like to use the opportunity to answer and address this about the meeting of examiners with the applicant. Paulo mentioned this. Well, the ANPI is always meeting this request. The meeting is required usually, and it may happen. Yes, you can meet the examiners and discuss your application. Sometimes the request comes to the Directorate of Patents after the application has been dismissed, and then it's no longer with us. It goes to a second level of request. So the meeting needs to be requested at that level. The NPI is certainly interested in discussing with the applicants and inventors their requests and clarify their doubts. I was quite happy to hear Paulo saying that he was welcomed by the NPI, that he was thankful for our consultancy work. So this is not advertising, okay? It is the result of a question that was sent to me. Okay, thank you, Dr. Liane. Now, just a comment being made by Antonio Abrantes from the audience. There is a success story, a Met Gonal Flash. Recently, it won the headlines. The USB received as royalties 20 million already, 20 million reais as a result of that patent. So it is a success story, as Dr. Paulo mentioned. Well, Dr. Ana Cristina, you have selected a few questions from the audience, right? If yes, please address them. Can you hear me? It's quite low actually, because you don't seem to be wearing a microphone. Well, the issue of Gonal Flash is a super success story, yes. It is the concrete example among several others we have, which perhaps have not reached the same stage of integration, university, company, private sector. There's a question from Eduardo Fonseca and to Paulo. What are the factors that BioZeus takes into account when deciding in which countries they should enter into the PCT phase or extension of a patent? And Paulo, if I may, the question by Antonella, she mentioned FDA, but actually it was FTO. Do you analyze freedom of exploration when you do a potential project? Do you reach that phase, or do you just stay in focusing the patent? skill, identifying chances of protection for that development you're providing? Or do you also look forward into the commercialization stage, thinking that the company you will be licensing to in the future will wish to know about this? So these are the two questions to clarify Antonella's question, and then Eduardo Fonseca's question regarding what should take into account when deciding in which countries they should go into the national PCT phase or filing applications as in other countries, Paris Convention. We stay on the level of patentability, actually, with the USPTO. And regarding the countries, that's an interesting issue. There are different factors. First of all, where there is greater medical need for glaucoma, the glaucoma patient, we went into different Asian countries because the incidence of glaucoma there is higher. Secondly, we take into account, of course, US, Europe, Japan. They are the classical countries, the larger markets in the world. So we consider those first. And also we analyze the geography. We look at the map, and say, okay, I'll protect here and there. You can't leave the country in the middle out, So you end up doing a geographical analysis in terms of that. And of course, if you have strong groups of suppliers, you're protecting insulin, let's say, you might have to focus India because it is one of the largest insulin producers. If you have strong groups interested in that technology, we will then file in those countries. Okay. Felipe, would you like to ask another question? Yes, I have a quick question to Dr. Liane. We still have a few minutes. Dr. Liane, in 2007, a joint ordinance was published by ABPI and the government to analyze requests of patents in the pharmaceutical area. Can you see the effects of this joint effort? 3 years have gone by. Was there any evolution there? If you can contribute, it would be great. Yes, there was an evolution there because the major issue there was the non-establishment of parameters for this request. And in time, procedures in Anvisa started interfering in our competencies, which the ABPI is responsible for analyzing the patentability with Anvisa and analyzing health safety issues for public health. So along the years, we faced different issues and problems, and there was a delay. As of 2017, with this joint ordinance, which had been established by the opinion issued by the Attorney General of our Republic, Anvisa did not abide by it. So with this joint ordinance, it became clear that Anvisa could participate in this process through subsidies. They're good, all is good for any patent application, be it coming from individuals, companies, or Anvisa. It always requests and requires more accurate examination. So there is no problem in people providing their opinion. But the competency of the ANPA and Anvisa were both quite well defined. 229C, as it's acting, we can advance more clearly, but still, it's not enough. Anvisa has been working in terms of receiving and approving a large amount of applications that do not receive subsidies. So we need to send everything there. They analyze that, whether it fits into that article in the legislation to provide subsidies. If there are no subsidies, if it's not harmful to public health, if it's not a prohibited or illegal compound, they give it back to us with approval. So it's totally innocuous work which needs to be revised. If we follow the rules and by receiving subsidies from Anvisa, well, it's always welcome. But the approval of Anvisa is unnecessary, totally unnecessary. That's quite clear. Today, this article, this piece of legislation was not well thought of. It harmed more than helped us. But anyway, now we've been working together as it should be in the government regarding competencies and roles of different institutions.
Thank you very much for your contribution. Dr. Ana Cristina, would you like to add any piece of information or any further questions so that we can close this panel? From what I just saw in the chat, there's no questions. So if you'd like to add anything, please. I would like to follow on your questions, Felipe. And I will comment on that to Liliane. We had in the official gazette the 2466 administrative rule creating this protection of intellectual property in healthcare and some other measures regarding that. I'd like to know if you, in the ABPI, you expect to see any change in the format or in the way that today we have this previous approval being performed by Anvisa, by our agency, if there is any change in this procedure, or if we can have any impact, if the applicants in the pharmaceutical area, they can expect any change in the position or any change in how the granting of the patents have been happening. Because indeed, things have been very harmonic previously, but it seems that somehow people were amazed or they did not expect the publication of this administrative rule. I don't know if you'd like to comment on that, if you have any vision of what can change. Maybe that's why I just said that this work was useless, because the government has to act in a clever way. And this is what we are searching for. What do I mean by that? We have to make this prospecting work. What are the drugs? I'm not saying that that's why we want to fight our backlog, but how the government's going to work from now on. We have a healthcare system that is outstanding, our SUS, and they have to provide the drugs, so the purchase power of the government is huge. So what are the drugs? What are the patents and patents applications that have a high potential to be used by the government? Why can't the government prepare itself for that, since they are able to have this examination? And they need this prospecting work, and nothing better than a committee. For instance, a committee that would have people from the Cancer Institute, INCA. No one else would know better than them, right? What are the drugs for cancer? What are those that have a major potential in the future to be used in the future? And the government can indeed be a large buyer for that, a major buyer for that. So why shouldn't we decide previously what would be the patents that will be granted, and we can follow this paperwork? I understood. I cannot answer on behalf of them regarding the creation of a committee, but what I understand is that we had this clever move in the sense that we do need a committee that not necessarily will just deny um, an application, but we need a clever committee that will make this prospecting work, analyze, and define the future steps and to define the priorities as well. So I do believe that this is the line or the pathway that we are going to follow. I do not believe today with the pathway that the government has been adopting regarding intellectual property in Brazil that we would have any fear with this regards. But how can we make it operate in the government, the best practices? Thank you, Liane. Thank you, Liane. Thank you, Ana Cristina. Would like to add or comment on that, or have the question been answered? Well, perfect. I believe that now we are out of time, and I'd like to thank all the participants, the audience, our panelists, Liane, Paulo, Flavia, for the brilliant presentations. They were all excellent. And obviously, our panelists, Ana Cristina, for the contribution and participation, such a valuable participation. And with that, I'd like to end the panel. Thank you all very much, and have a nice day.